on. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. GIJeep has generously agreed to interview me today about my project. And Jeep, you said you don't care if my camera's on, correct?
No, you're good.
Okay. So, great. Let's do it. I'm going to be playing something in the background. Share screen. It'll be in silent mode. So this is your interview, Jeep. Start ripping me apart. Go ahead, please.
Sure, man. Sure. So, I'll give you a little bit of background about my interest in this topic, and then like what I saw from the videos about Pod Home. People from where we know each other know a little bit about me, but that I'm a service-connected disabled veteran, and it's been quite some time, but I myself was homeless for a little while, and understand enough about that realistically from the perspective of veterans who are on the streets. And I've been in some therapeutic processes where it was a very common thread, multiple group settings where 13 to 20 of us, almost all of us, had experienced a little bit of homelessness. That's kind of the perspective of where I'm coming from, and have been involved with some people who did some, let's call it, alternatives to homelessness, particularly for veterans. And kind of the big idea that we had didn't really work out in scale. It was pretty good in some individual components where, we got a few guys off the streets, but it wasn't going to be something that the way we were doing it would scale up. So, it all revolved around turning travel trailers or cargo trailers into travel trailers, little custom mobile kind of living situation that's not horribly uncomfortable, but realistically doesn't solve some of the more, I guess the way to say it is more deep-seated roots of why so many, particularly in our instance, veterans end up on the streets. So, and what I saw of this in the walkthrough, based on that Japanese kind of pod hotel kind of a situation, I think there's a lot of potential for this to actually be something that could work. And I guess, on the screen now, I'm looking at the three wise men, and that was one of the things that drew my attention was the inclusion of a VSO. That, especially from the veteran perspective, if there's not some level of involvement with the VA, and we can all bitch about the VA all we want, I do quite often, but that it does offer an avenue towards counseling, medical care, and depending on the severity of your injuries or conditions, compensation for what you've earned in your time in service. That can in itself be a way to escape homelessness. So I guess realistically, from like the questions I would ask, because I've been involved with shelters that don't go well, and like I said, the smaller scale project that a friend and I were working on that needed more conjunction with a lifestyle, right? The vets that we would be able to provide the trailers for are guys who are more likely to be like he and I are, that we can go spend a couple weeks hiking and then have a fallback place to live, that living in the woods throughout it, through a period of, traumatic experience or joblessness or whatever, that there's a place for you to sleep outside of the weather and have a shower, and not to be crass about it, but not have to shit in the woods for a night, right? Like that that specific audience, right? Like it's not for everyone to have that go live out on the trail for a little while and then crash in a trailer when you need to. That this seems more like a temporary to long-term stay. So I guess my first question in that is, like I saw in your description, there's that veterans would certainly be someone you would involve even in the management and day-to-day operation of this living situation. And that we all do understand the struggles of a lot of people choose to be homeless. I did not, right? That there is some level of choice, but I guess the origin of eligibility for residency, participation, whatever it is, what kind of a criteria would you look at for people in need to enter Pot House?
Well, that's actually a great question because I don't have an answer for you. How do you prove you're homeless? I mean, my background, I was homeless for about a year and a half amidst a very, very ugly divorce. I got caught camping inside his city limits one day. I got chased out of that building. And he didn't even issue me a summons. I was a little out of it. Maybe I could have asked for a call report or something if I'd known that that'd be an issue. So great question. There is no answer. How do you prove you're homeless? Especially like my situation, there's nothing there. There's no proof. I guess you're just going to have to walk in and say, "Yeah, I'm homeless. Hook me up." And 2 days later, when it's discovered you're full of shit, we kick you out or something. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. My situation, I was homeless for about a year and a half amidst, like I said, a very bad divorce. But towards the end of that, the last couple months, I had the good fortune to finally make contact with a group in Salem that unfortunately no longer exists for homeless vets and specifically male veterans. They said there was a female program. I never saw anything about it. Home of the Brave. They set up housing for. I think there was 8 of us there at the height. Oh, sorry, people. I'm gonna replay this until. I'm just gonna keep replaying this until we think we're done. So yeah, that was entirely a temporary thing. And my only real problem, going back to the 3 wise men, is I was working part-time as a security guard. I could not get that first, last, and deposit together for even a one space apartment. It wasn't an apartment. It was a room in a house. But I couldn't even get that together to get off the streets. And by the time I could get that together, that was gone. So, in my situation, I'd go to the 3 wise men and say, "Hey, I'm here. I want to be out of here as fast as possible. Is there anything you can do to help me?" "Oh yeah, Vash HUD, this, that, the other thing." "Well, okay. Are you actually going to do it?" "Oh, yeah." Because, folks, what he said about the VA, that's an absolute truth. And let's just move on past that.
That'd be its own show. If this was a bitch about the VA show, it'd be 6 hours. And there's plenty to complain about, but my experience in the last few years with the VA has actually been overwhelmingly positive. And
Good for you.
somewhat in preparation for this, was speaking with a very, very close friend of mine, a very highly decorated individual that that I respect tremendously, who he and I share some of the same passion for this, that unless they really want to be, vets shouldn't be on the street, right?
Never.
But that what we've seen in just the term shelter will turn off a lot of vets, right? I don't want to deal with these assholes.
Yeah.
And that the criteria side of it pushes a lot of people away. And some of them you can route through like a municipal organization, a county office or something like that, where you call and register and then they tell the shelter you're legit, and then you can start to move forward with that. And I had this a little bit later on in the questions, but since like it seems that some of the inspiration was derived from these pod hotels, that like the pod living area situation in a shared overall structure like this with storage and assistance and food and bathrooms and stuff like that, I personally would prefer that over bunks. Which is why my buddy and I were looking at like the trailer aspect is you have your own place, right? And if I walked into a squad bay again with a bunch of bunks sitting there, I would turn around and leave.
No.
It wouldn't matter if it was cold out or anything like that. So, I mean, if you could just maybe give me like an idea about what that level of inspiration, I mean, having both of us the same experience of not being able to put enough together to throw down a deposit.
Okay. So actually, my experience with my bad experience, by the way, with barrack style or squad based style um, housing arrangements. I see you. We lost our guest.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, beautiful.
My experience with this actually came before I was even in the military. I was working I was interviewing for a security position at the Redding, California National Guard Armory, which would become a homeless shelter when it wasn't being used by the National Guard for their purposes. And I walked in, and what I saw was basically PVC pipe that had been arranged into squares with little legs, and attached to that, I can't remember how, was what looked like a blue plastic tarp, really. And they would section off parts of, I think, the basketball court, but it might have been the mustering area, foul weather muster, into, I think it was 5 or 6 cots at a time. And I looked around this and oh my God, this is what a homeless shelter looks like. I don't know. Tell me that tell me this living out in the streets is not better than this. Convince me. And that was my first experience. My next experience was after I'd become homeless myself. I had gotten the lead on where to find this veteran shelter. And the office for the veteran shelter was also the office for the local regular shelter. Oh no, excuse me. Between those 2 points in time, I was homeless. I did go up to the one of the shelters, and there was a police officer sitting outside with somebody in his back seat. I didn't even get in the door that time. I turned around and walked out. I went to the park a couple blocks away and tried to take a nap there. Then I'm told, hey, no, go back there, ask for a particular person, and he'll set you up. Okay, so I go back and I did ask for that guy, and as I'm walking in, the first thing I hear is shouting. And I don't mean this, loud, rambunctious voice. I mean, fucking shouting like I'm gonna kick somebody's ass shouting. Because I had literally walked into the very tail end of a fight. And this guy was screaming at the top of his lungs. Excuse me. He may not have been screaming at the top of his lungs. He was still fucking furious, though. I'm a combat marine. My hands are deadly weapons. My hands are registered weapons. I'm a marine. And this guy put up. I sat down at the table as far away from him as I could get and said to the other guy at the table, "Is it always like this?" And that poor guy just nodded his head like, "This is the fourth one today." Oh my God, am I glad I didn't walk in last time. And what did I get myself into here? Sorry, folks. So yeah, that place sucked. At every single possible level, that place sucked. Fortunately, I was just going in there to meet with the guy that ran the veteran shelter. So I was in and out, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours. And told, okay, come to this address on this day at about this time, and we'll talk to you again there. And that was, I think, the next day, the day after that, something like that. And yeah, it was just fucking, it was ridiculous. My introduction to that place was an arrest the first time and the tail end of a fight the second time. Oh God, I can't do this. I can't do
Well, it's
this.
going to happen. Like that situation is going to happen in any of these. I don't really know the right term, right? I don't like the term shelter, so I'll just use alternative, which is where my buddy and I were like, well, we'll give them their own place, but it requires a lot of maintenance and it requires a vehicle that can pull it. And there's a lot of other factors that, if there is a drastic substance abuse issue, they'll just end up selling it and right back where they were before. And we're not going to have any real means of, oversight to make sure that doesn't happen. So he's still doing it. I don't want to put him on blast because it's not really like a foundation or anything. But that in our experience with it over whatever, like 2 years, but that some of the ideas about how to, particularly through the lens of veteran homelessness, to dodge some of that or have that level of accountability is that no matter what your discharge status is, that you still have eligibility to file claims and get involved with the Veterans Administration, particularly for counseling and healthcare. You might not get compensation if you got kicked out, but that it's still worth getting involved because you can take a lot of that burden away from organizations who are trying to help you when there already is a mechanism for that. But a lot of us don't trust the VA. A lot of us have negative experiences. Mine, like I said, are getting far more positive. So, but in that side of when you're in a situation like that, a shelter or an assistance home or whatever we're going to call it, that there are basic needs, right? And it seems like the pod home concept has a lot of that covered, from like storage. I like the idea that there's cages just at least big enough for a bike.
We kind of lost you there for a second.
Okay, like I was talking about the storage that
Jeep, we're losing you.
It's value. Yeah, Wi-Fi might not be the greatest way to go here today. Is that any better?
Might be. Keep get back into it and let's hear what you say.
Okay, so I guess the question is like about basic needs. Basic living seems covered. As it goes for food, like what are your ideas about that? I've seen shelters that really lean heavily on volunteers and people supplying cooked dishes and stuff like that for the residents.
Um, you're not going to like my answer, so I'm going to go with Papa Carey's answer. My dad uh, says basic meals, and we're talking probably bologna and cheese sandwiches uh, once a day, a cereal in the morning, basic cereal in the morning, that sort of thing. Yeah, I have to admit that we got to keep it down to the basic, the absolute basic necessities, um, because it can get very expensive very quickly. Uh, and that's an unfortunate fact of this little universe is it's never going to be good and pretty and beautiful. Um, Now, of course, you don't have to eat there. That's not like a requirement. If there's a Mickey D's right across the street, you want to go over there and get a sausage and egg McMuffin. Go ahead, please. That's fine. Um, I mean, it kind of is what it is. Unfortunately, um, if the residents were in a position to be able to do so, when I was at um, Home of the Brave, um, I was every resident had to cook an evening meal. There was a rotation that we were supposed to go in, um, and uh, Ben, Gerald and Ben actually supplied all the food. We you want to do chili? Okay, great. We're gonna do chili Friday, right? And oh yeah, um, Carrie's gonna uh, Carrie's gonna cook it that day. Um, because my turn it was pizzas. I made pizzas. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how much further I could really answer your question from there.
No, that's all right. It doesn't matter if I like the answers or not, right? But people can't expect filet mignon every night at a place like that. And some of the places I volunteered, I have seen that destroy their budgets, trying to keep up with three
Mm.
giant meals a day for depending on how many people they have there. It does wear out their funds very quickly, and there are. It sounds strange, but some more important things to consider: power and climate control and stuff like that in a group setting like that. So, um, but that it is if there is a level of assistance to get them into whatever unemployment benefits, or particularly for vets to be getting compensation, um, that they can get their own food, because it does put a big burden on a lot of those types of organizations. And I guess I'll segue into another question I had about it. I didn't see this in any of the videos, but that a lot of them do, that I've experienced, and I'm just curious about it for pod home. If there is like a planned like structure of responsibility, like chores, pitch in. Yes, you are going to sweep up, and this isn't a hotel where there's maids. This is a temporary living situation to help you out. Um, but in that level of accountability and responsibility, that will help some of us kind of get back on our track. Like, you got to take ownership for this little area of responsibility. Keep your area clean and chip in on the common areas if you had any idea of like structure regarding that.
Yes, but this is at a level that I know I don't know enough to know what I don't know. So that's where I have to back off and let uh, the people who actually do run the pod homes run it their way. Um, I have a vision, which is you have a set of daily chores, and maybe you get rotated through them. Like, when I was in the Guard, we had sweepers every day, and everybody got assigned a different sweepers assignment, usually every week. My BM3 was pretty good about rotating us on a weekly basis. Um, I'm also aware that that may not work in this environment as much as we want it to. It may not work in this environment. Now, you absolutely will have to take care of your pod, and if everybody else in your area is saying, pod 1-1 it smells like somebody died in there, well, you're just going to have to pull everything out of there and clean everything and maybe burn your mattress, and take a shower at least once a week. 'Cause I was always able to get a shower once a week. I stole it from the local JC, but I did get the shower. Um, uh, I that's kind of the way that is. Uh, and again, I wish I could give you an absolute definitive answer to that, and I can't.
No, that's all right. And if it's going to be multiple locations, I mean, some standard of that might be
Oh
helpful.
yeah.
You know, at least, yeah, you can't come in here and make a mess of this. But I guess that does kind of to push to the next thing, that particularly for veterans, for the military side of things, we move around so much when we're in service that it warps our sense of what home really could even be when we get out, right? So, I mean, I've had this discussion with lots of people. I never considered that I was from any of the places I was stationed, uh, and that has been like the vagabond kind of lifestyle for me for decades, even after service. That if I don't like it here, I can always just pick up and move on. I'm good at that, at starting over a lot. Um, but in a situation where someone's been on the street for a while, or even someone that's very new to it and might be from that particular city or town where the pod home is going to be, what type of duration for stay would you anticipate? Is there going to be a limit? This isn't going to turn into forever. And how would you, I guess, just put a time frame around what a duration for a stay at pod home might look like?
Um, there's going to be some cases like my stay at Home with Brave it was about 2 months when I expected it to be 2 weeks. Um, and there's going to be some people who just they get. There was one guy who was going through uh, home for the fifth time, I think it was, third time, something like that, because he got great, and then his world fell apart again. Um, and so I wish I could give you a definitive answer to that. Some people, there's always going to be one or two people who they're in today and out tomorrow, and there's always going to be somebody who's still there 20 years later, who every week it's, oh yeah, I'm going to get an apartment with my buddy from work, and then everything falls apart. The moment something really starts to happen, it all falls apart. I know a very unfortunate case recently where a young woman, every time she started to get into a good uh, housing environment, it would turn bad on her. Um, I know her family was trying to hook her up with a return home, uh, but unfortunately, her situation just got ahead of her, and it ended very tragically for the family. Um, and every week, apparently, it was a new, oh, I'm moving in with my friend, and that fell apart. Oh, I'm moving in with my fiance. Well, that not only fell apart, but she moved in with the fiance's mother, and that fell apart too. Um, so there's there's always going to be those kinds of cases where you just got to keep coming back, or maybe you can't make it out for 20 years.
And I mean, it sounds like part of in the video that I watched, that the residents that get in there, like you're saying, they're going to live on the lower tiers because they got in there first or something like that. That the longer they're there, like that type of an assistance and a sense of home and potentially belonging and connection to a community is what you're trying to really get going here. Am I right in assuming that?
You're not wrong. Um, First of all, I do want to back you up a little bit. I think you're talking about the door down on that ground level.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for the disabled residents, and that's a special that's a special deal. That oh well, I didn't have the money to have the graphics designer do that. Um, Sorry, folks, I was not able to find this video on my computer, so I have to just keep restarting. Um, Beyond that, though, um, yeah, I mean, there might be some people that they come into a pod home and they think, "Oh, I'm going to be out of here in 2 3 months, or or 2 or 3 weeks," and they find that this is the place where they're able to function in society, and great, I guess, good for you. It beats jail. Um, to be perfectly blunt, not by much. All right. You're free to come and go as you want. You can go outside and smoke. I'm a pack a day smoker. I will not smoke inside. I will go outside and smoke. Um, and that's a rule I apply to everybody else in my life, or at least in my homes. Um, and I mean, if this is the lifestyle that works for you, I guess good for you. Um, uh, uh Hot Tub, the place in Salem. Um, I was really looking forward to getting out of there, to the point that paying $150 a month in rent for a partitioned section of this lady's living room um, was a great deal for me. Like I'm out of there. I'm here. I'm paying my rent. Um, I'm paying my share of utilities. This is my new home, and I'm so excited to be there. And I even remembered my first night there. I'm excited to be here. Ooh. Um, I was able to get out of there eventually too. um, Again, every case is unique. I would submit to anybody watching this later on, if you're still at a pod home after 6 months, you need to go to the Three Wise Men and ask to speak to people from the county psychiatric health services. Okay, there is probably something wrong with you. You may not need medication. You may just need a lot of therapy or something. But if this is the lifestyle you enjoy, if you like living there, you probably need help, and a kind of help that I can't even tell you if it's got a name. Jeep, you're muted. If you're still there, you're muted, bud. Ah, we lost him again. And we got him back.
Hey, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi is struggling. We got some weather going on here today, but
Oh,
I really only have two more questions. So, um, I'll try to pull this off. What do you think like the hopeful locations would be for a pod home?
okay. A big one is, and I see the building in my head. It's down on Skid Row in Los Angeles. That's an actual street for those of you that don't know. It was a parking garage at one time. I think the parking garage could be retrofitted into a pod home more or less easily. Um, Somewhere down in the Mission District of San Francisco, and a particularly infamous part of New York. It's not called the 5 Points anymore. Jeep is struggling with his Wi-Fi, folks, so bear with us. Um, it's not called the 5 Points anymore. It's where the um, main courthouse is now, amongst other things, the city jail. Um, Within about 3 blocks of that, so very very high concentration of homeless people uh, in major cities. And my first one, I've said this before a couple times, is a test facility. My thought is Skid Row. 100 homeless veterans to come in and test the first building and say, okay, this works, that doesn't. And between the veterans that live there at that point is figure out, okay, what do we need to do to make this work? Some of them might be mechanical, like the ventilation for the pods isn't working. Well, why not? Well, I can smell my neighbor. Well, shit. The fuck is going on back? Because you can't see it in the walkthrough. There's actually a workspace behind the pods so that maintenance personnel can get back there. They can fix the ventilation, the electrical, the whatever else needs to be back there, um, without having to pull pods out. Um, get back there and figure out what the hell's going on. Why are because we failed to put a backflow control, or the filters we bought or are using just don't work for this app, whatever the reason is. um there's there's not enough toilets for the number of people that live here, right? My vision has always been one toilet for every 4 pods, or 4 or 5 pods. Well, when they get into it, they figure out, yeah, one toilet for every 4 or 5 pods just isn't going to cut it, bud. That's not nearly enough. We need maybe one toilet per pod. That sounds ridiculous to me, but that might be what they figure out is needed. And actually get in there and make it work. I hope that answered your question. I don't think it did, though.
Yeah, I mean, so any location that would be willing to give it a run. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
talking like cities and stuff like that. So wherever it would be accepted, and you'd get the whatever the appropriate level of people that are willing to jump in and help. Yeah, and then every city pretty much in the world's dealing with it at the moment, right? Lots of
Oh, yes.
changing legislation about public camping, and there's never enough places for people to go. So yeah, wherever people could lobby and pressure their elected officials to get it going, I think it would probably end up having an audience, right? There's no shortage of homeless people. Um, and then my last real question, and I saw you touch on this in one of the videos too. You know, nothing in the world is free, and
Nope.
Funding and
You're right.
startup and all that kind of stuff is definitely a requirement. and that was definitely something that my friend and I, in building these trailers, was something we had to struggle with. We came out of pocket. We did a lot of the work ourselves, and he's a real brilliant carpenter. I'm a dangerous carpenter. I'd say I'm Andy as opposed to being a genius like he is, but that it did take a pretty good whack at our wallets. So what kind of hopeful plans or options are you exploring or even open to? I know you want to do, sounds like a lot of this yourself, but for funding and upkeep, and what does that look like? Are you going to shoot for grants, and what do you think you could see in the funding avenue?
All right. First of all, there is no funding into me at all. Local governments, city councils, and county boards of supervisors are the ones that really got to make this happen. They're the ones that do control their local communities. And they can get the funding the ways that they find. Like, I know Los Angeles could easily afford to build a 100 unit pod home with no outside funding at all. All right. Sacramento could. I saw them building a much more complicated building when I moved out of there in 2005 or 5 or 6. Oh no, 2009. Excuse me. To scale it up from there, they may have to turn to the state and feds and say, "Hey, we need to borrow, another 10 million, billion, whatever it is, to build X number of units." And that's a decision that your local officials really do have to. They have to figure this out. They're the experts, hopefully, in this issue. And this is also another one of those times when I got to defer to the locals to figure out that part of the equation themselves without, there comes a point, as my dad put it, you're helping too much. I got to back off and let them figure out, oh, okay, we need to do it this way and can't do it that way. I mean, this one, you see, it's all gray concrete. Concrete may be too expensive locally. Or, in California, a concrete building like this is just an earthquake waiting to happen. So they may have to build it with different material. They may have to do a lot of other things differently that I can't begin to anticipate.
No, but like I said, nothing's free. But there are avenues to do that, through whatever you want to call it, like municipal funding, that there are allocations in most government, like city governments like that, already for how to battle homelessness, and as opposed to just tearing out tent cities and stuff like that. You're wasting money, and you're setting up an adversarial situation. It's going to go bad, real bad, sooner or later somewhere. And, God forbid, but we'll see that on the news. And that's not something I want to see. In a previous position I held, I had to deal with that personally a lot for people camping on some grounds that we were managing, and how to deal with that. And that conversation, it's never an easy conversation. And as much as people look at someone crashing out in a public woods in a tent as a nuisance, to them, that's their whole fucking world, So, you got to be really delicate with that. And if there is a structure, that people can go to, that's a little bit of a leg up on reducing that level of effort that the town has to deal with. But like we were talking earlier, that usually ends up in some kind of shithole shelter scenario that isn't very welcoming, accommodating, or all that useful. And in a lot of instances, just does turn into a conduit for drug dealing and other crime that isn't going to help the people that it's designed to. So, like we've been experiencing some technical difficulties here with my Wi-Fi. So I don't really have much else, man. I want to say that, like, we both been through that experience, and that I know there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help, especially when it comes to homeless vets. And to me, that is one of the biggest shameful things that I see in this country, that there is any vet on the streets that doesn't want to be, that we owe each other better. And for those of us that are in a decent position, it's definitely a worthwhile thing to lend that hand and help out. I've seen it go well. I've seen it go not so well in some of these scenarios, and sometimes people get out a little bit over their skis and can't really pull it off. A lot of them are looking at tiny homes, and I support that effort. But again, they're not cheap, and they're not easy to maintain, and you're not always going to get individuals who can go in there and take care of it the right way. So, I really applaud your effort, your passion. I know where it's born from. We might have walked different paths in the past to get here, but I think, just the level of encouragement that you're not alone in the idea, right? It's really how you pull it all off and how you help other people. And I haven't been around forever, but I've been around long enough to know that everybody does need some help from time to time. And I really do, applaud just the vision and the passion. And I really appreciate, the time to have this conversation, despite my shitty internet out here. And I'll see you where I see you, man. But I do, keep your head up and keep pushing forward for this. And someday I'll be at the first ribbon cutting ceremony, brother.
I hope so. If you can hang out for just a second, there's something you said I really do want to get into. One of the most dangerous things on earth is a homeless veteran, or more to the point, unpaid, unfed, and unhappy veterans. Because if you don't understand that we are capable of doing things that you can't even imagine, then you're stupid. You don't really want homeless veterans above all else. That's where Hitler started out, homeless veteran. Maybe if he'd had someplace other than a flop house, which is where he ended up, which is just a homeless shelter that you pay to stay at, the world might have ended up a whole lot different. I'm just saying. Okay, so Jeep, if you have any other observations?
No, that's all I had, man. And I'm not a professional interviewer or anything. Just, this is something that, touches my heart. And, you play a certain role in certain chat rooms or whatever and pretend that you don't have a heart. But every time I see that fucking sign, somebody says, vet, please help. I feel obligated, right? And try not to do the stolen valor test on people or anything like that. But, there's a YouTuber out there that does VA assistance stuff. And he says, like, if we didn't help each other, something went wrong, and I do take that as something I want to do in my life, and be able to help vets, one, get off the street, gain employment, gain access to the VA. And it seems like you've got those concepts covered in the concept for Pod Home. So I dig it. That it's it really is kind of up to us. But we joke around a lot. I've mentioned a few times even here that we can bitch about the VA, but um, it really is up to us to hold them to account for what they do or don't do for us. And
Yeah.
in something like this, veteran homelessness and healthcare, and just something as small as how our medications get prescribed, and what alternatives maybe we could look forward to in the future with the VA. That it really is up to us to hold them to account. And I saw you talk about this in a video, but if this is something that no matter what it is in regards to vets, if it's something we see that needs to happen,
Yeah.
our congressional representatives answer to us. They work for us. And from what I've seen overall in the veteran community, we definitely deserve better. So,
Could we get worse?
again, I applaud what you're doing, man.
Could we get worse? I'd love to see how they could do worse than they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not old enough to have, come back from Vietnam, right? But that was really shameful what happened with that class of dudes. It's improved since then.
Oh, I am not wearing this cover again next time. It is too hot. um, Jeep, I really, you said thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview. If nothing else, you've given me some things I got to work on. You had a couple questions I can't answer, and I wish I could. And maybe I should start looking into those. Unless you have something else, I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up here.
Yeah, man, that's it. Thanks for the time, brother, and thanks for the effort. I'll see you.
All right, take it easy. So we're gonna stop screen. And I'm not gonna kick him out of here. So, folks, this is a big thing for me. That comment about unpaid, unfed, and unhappy veterans, that wasn't a threat. That was a flat out statement of fact. You do not want veterans to be homeless. The good ones will just be a drain on society by being in the way. All right. And of course, there's the Hitler scenario. You got a wide spectrum of potential results, and you don't really want any of them. Yes, my vision is that first class, first pod home, 100 veterans with that focus on female veterans, because once we veterans do figure out what it takes to make this place work, we'll go and start the next ones. My thought has always been Skid Row first. Okay, great. Get that one up and running, see what it takes to make it work, and then go start the next 100. Because there's a lot more than 100 cities in the United States, I can tell you that. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there with just this one last thought. I'm not a construction guy. I'm not a manager. All right, I'm not an accountant. Do not give me money for pod home. All right, anybody telling you that money is going towards pod home, they may not be lying, but they better have a city councilman or a board of supervisors card in their back pocket that they can show you. Because otherwise, they're not legit. Call the cops. Really call the cops and let them figure it out from there. go to your city council, go to your board of supervisor and say, hey, this is an idea. I think we should try this. Send it to your friends and family and say, hey, this is an idea. I really think we should try it. All right. Because I believe that within 5 years of the first pod home being built, if we're serious, we could have all homeless people who want to get off the streets gone. They'd be in permanent housing. We'd be tearing down the last pod home, shipping the last pods to a warehouse in somewhere in the Arizona desert, right? Sitting right next to the Ark of the Covenant and 20 feet down from the Roswell UFO, right? But we got to be serious about doing it. Obviously, my life circumstances have improved. Not everybody's this fortunate. All right. Please go to your local officials. Ask them to do this. Ask them, ask your family to look at it and go to their local officials. That's the only way that this would ever really work. I would love to be able to say this and this and this and this. And as many discussions with my father have revealed to me, I know I don't know enough to know. Even what I don't know. I'm not sure I know enough to know what I do know about how to make a pod home work. Go to your local officials. Go to your friends and family. And God bless you, all of you who do that.